My mother-in-law looked at my pregnant belly, then pointed toward the front door. "You don't belong in this house anymore." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She grabbed my suitcase, opened the front door, and threw it onto the porch. Rain poured from the sky. I stood there, 7 months pregnant, holding my stomach with one hand and my tears with the other. Then she smiled. "Go back to your parents. My son deserves someone better." I slowly stepped outside. She slammed the door behind me. I had no idea that by the very next morning, everything she believed she had won would completely fall apart. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. My husband is James Mitchell. His mother is Margaret Mitchell. We had been married for 4 years. For most of that time, Margaret never accepted me. She believed I wasn't good enough for her son. I worked as an elementary school teacher. I didn't come from a wealthy family, but James always said I married the kindest woman I've ever known. To Margaret, kindness didn't matter. Status did, money did, appearances did. When we announced our pregnancy, everyone celebrated except Margaret. She forced a smile, then quietly whispered, "I hope this baby doesn't ruin James's future." I pretended not to hear because I wanted peace for my baby, for my marriage, for our family. As the months passed, my pregnancy became more difficult. The doctor ordered me to avoid stress. James became even more protective. He cooked dinner, helped around the house, never missed a doctor's appointment. Margaret hated seeing that. She constantly complained, treating her like she's helpless. Pregnancy isn't an illness. James ignored the comments. One Saturday he had to leave town for an important business meeting. Just one night before leaving, he kissed my forehead. "Be back tomorrow morning. Call me if you need anything." I smiled. "Be fine." A few hours later, someone knocked. It was Margaret. She walked inside without waiting for permission. She looked around the house. What a mess. Everything was perfectly clean. She wasn't talking about the house. She was talking about me. She sat on the couch, crossed her arms. "Made my son your servant." I stayed calm. "James helps because he loves me." She laughed. "No, helps because you've made yourself look weak." Stood up slowly. "I'm tired. Like to rest." Instead of leaving, she followed me upstairs. She opened the nursery door, looked at the baby crib, then shook her head. "My poor grandson." I looked at her. "You don't even know if it's a boy." She smiled. "It doesn't matter. What matters is who raises the child." A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I had never seen her look at me that way before, not angry, determined. An hour later, the rain started, the electricity flickered. Margaret suddenly walked into the guest room, picked up my suitcase. "What are you doing?" She didn't answer. She began folding my clothes. I rushed toward her. "Margaret, stop." She zipped the suitcase shut, walked downstairs, opened the front door and threw it outside. I froze. She looked directly at me. "You need to leave." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "My husband would never allow this." She smiled. "He's not here. By the time he comes back, you'll already be gone." I stepped backward. "I'm 7 months pregnant." She shrugged. "Then maybe your parents should take care of you." She grabbed my purse, placed it beside the suitcase, then without another word she pushed the front door open. "Leave." I stood there, heart racing. Rain soaking the porch, the baby kicked inside my stomach. I placed one hand over my belly, trying to stay calm, trying not to panic. Then the front door slammed shut. I was alone, outside, pregnant, in the middle of a storm, and I had no idea that someone across the street had just witnessed everything. The rain grew heavier. I picked up my suitcase with trembling hands. Every step felt harder than the last. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to stress my baby. Just as I reached the sidewalk, a voice called out, "Sarah." I turned around. It was our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Dorothy Hayes. She hurried over with an umbrella. "What happened?" Before I could answer, she looked toward the house, then back at me. I saw everything. She gently held my arm. "Coming with me." I wanted to refuse, but another sharp pain spread across my stomach. Mrs. Hayes immediately became worried. "No arguments. You need to sit down." She helped me into her warm living room, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, made me tea, then quietly asked, "James no?" I shook my head. "He thinks I'm resting at home." Hayes frowned. "Call him." I picked up my phone. No signal. The storm had interrupted the network. His meeting was also in an area with poor reception. Every call failed. Meanwhile, back at the house, Margaret sat comfortably in the living room. She believed she had finally won. She even called one of her friends. "I finally got rid of her. My son will thank me one day." She laughed, completely unaware that Mrs. Hayes's home security cameras had recorded everything, every word, every action, every second. The next morning, the storm ended. James drove home earlier than expected. He smiled as he unlocked the front door. "Sarah," no answer. He walked upstairs. The bedroom was empty. The nursery was empty. Then he noticed her suitcase was gone. He rushed downstairs, calmly looked up from her coffee. "Good morning." "Where's Sarah?" She didn't even hesitate. "She left." James's face changed. "What do you mean she left?" Margaret shrugged. "I told her your marriage wasn't working." Packed her things and went back to her parents. For a moment James said nothing, then he quietly asked, "You expect me to believe that my 7-month pregnant wife left without calling me?" Margaret's smile faded. Just then someone knocked at the front door. Mrs. Hayes stood outside. Sarah stood beside her, safe but exhausted. The moment James saw me, he ran toward me. What happened? Before I could speak, Mrs. Hayes handed him a small USB drive. I think you should watch this first. Margaret suddenly looked nervous. What's that? Mrs. Hayes answered calmly. My security cameras. They recorded everything yesterday. The first time Margaret's confident smile disappeared, James stared at the USB in his hand, then looked at his mother. His voice became colder than I had ever heard. Mom, if what's on this drive matches what I think happened, nothing will ever be the same again. Margaret tried to laugh. You don't need to watch anything. It was all just a misunderstanding. James didn't answer. He simply walked toward his office, closed the door and plugged the USB into his computer. The video began playing. There was no sound at first, just the front porch, the driveway. Then Margaret appeared carrying my suitcase. She opened the front door, threw my belongings into the rain. A few seconds later, I slowly walked outside, one hand protecting my pregnant belly. The camera clearly showed me begging her to stop. Then the audio began. Margaret's voice echoed through the speakers. You don't belong in my son's life. Your baby, and leave. If you really loved James, you'd disappear. James froze. He replayed the video, then watched it again, every second, every word, every lie. When he finally walked out of the office, his face was calm, too calm. Margaret smiled nervously. James, I can explain. He looked directly at her. No, you've been explaining for 4 years. You've been lying for 4 years. I kept believing you. Room became silent. He walked over to me, wrapped his arm around my shoulders, then looked back at his mother. You threw my pregnant wife into a storm. You risked the life of my child. There is nothing left to explain. Margaret's confidence disappeared. I was only trying to protect you. James shook his head. No, you were trying to control me. Yesterday you lost that control forever. His father, Robert, had just arrived home. He looked around the room in confusion. What's going on? Without saying a word, James handed him the USB. Robert watched the footage. His expression slowly changed from confusion to disappointment. When the video ended, he quietly removed his glasses, looked at Margaret, and asked one simple question. Could you do this? Margaret started crying. I only wanted what was best for James. Robert answered. No, you wanted what was best for yourself. Never once thought about our grandchild. He turned to James. I'm sorry. I should have stopped this years ago. James nodded. I know. Then he took my hand. We are leaving. Margaret stepped in front of the door. You can't leave like this. I'm your mother. James looked into her eyes. And Sarah is my wife. Baby comes first. Protecting them means walking away. I'll do it every single time. We packed the rest of our things that afternoon, not because we had nowhere to stay, but because we finally understood peace was worth more than any house. Robert surprised us. He handed James a small envelope. Already spoken to my lawyer. The house I bought as a rental years ago is yours now. Move there. Raise your family somewhere filled with love. Tears filled my eyes. We hugged him. For the first time in years, it felt like someone had truly chosen us. 3 months later, our daughter was born, healthy, beautiful. Robert visited the hospital with flowers and tiny pink blankets. Margaret wasn't there. She had called many times, sent long messages, even wrote letters. But James wasn't ready. 6 months later, Robert became seriously ill. The family gathered at the hospital. Margaret arrived quietly. She looked different, older, not because of age, because of regret. She slowly walked toward me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that. She looked at the baby sleeping in my arms. I almost made the biggest mistake of my life. I chose pride over family. Tears rolled down her face. I can't change what I did. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to become someone my granddaughter won't be ashamed of. I looked at James. He squeezed my hand, then I looked back at Margaret. Trust isn't rebuilt with words. It's rebuilt with time. She nodded. Wait. 1 year later, family dinners looked very different. There were no insults, no comparisons, no manipulation, only respect. Margaret never forgot the day she threw me out into the storm. Neither did James. Whenever someone asked why our family had changed so much, he always gave the same answer. The day my mother kicked my pregnant wife out was the day she almost lost her son forever. Sometimes karma doesn't arrive with anger. Sometimes it arrives the next morning in the form of the truth. And once the truth is seen, nothing is ever the same again. Subscribe to Calm Revenge Stories for a new story every single day. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to argue.